Futian saw the fighters not saying anything, and knew that they probably were speculating something. The circumstances that led him to flee the origin realm were rather peculiar, and that those kinds of attacks would have definitely killed him, after all. Futian saw the fighters not saying anything, and knew that they probably were speculating something. The circumstances that led him to flee the origin realm were rather peculiar, and that those kinds of attacks would have definitely killed him, after all. However, given that it was a chance given by Princess Donghuang, none of them would dare to say anything about it even if they knew. The origin realm is now in peril. Are you all here to ask for another fight? Futian looked at them and said, "This time, I won't be fighting like I have a death wish, as I did 20 years ago." They all wore concerned expressions on their faces. Futian hadn't been fighting with a death wish back then. He knew that he would be able to escape. They all knew that things were different on that day. If they were to dare kill Futian, the alliance of the Heavenly Mandate Academy might probably go all out. Furthermore, the Academy's lineup seemed to have gotten even more powerful, with 2 more Titans added to the roster. It was also a given that their powers saw some change as well. Yet if they were to go all out with the Academy, they would be put in a dangerous spot all the same. If a battle of such levels were to break out again, there would probably be no turning back from it. It was just as how Futian put it. The origin realm was in peril, and the dark forces now had their eyes on the realm. If they were to go out to destroy the Academy's alliance, and ended up damaged in the battle, they would most probably meet their doom all the same, and wouldn't be able to survive the tumultuous times. It was especially so for those native forces, without any backing from the upper worlds. If both parties were to fight right there, and then, one party would definitely be snuffed out. Without such threats around, their own alliance would fall apart all the same, as none of them have any delusions about their own alliance. If they were to get into any trouble in that battle, the clan forces would probably end up doomed in those tumultuous times. As such, despite having come in mass, they had in truth realized that things at present were different altogether from how things were 20 years ago. Furthermore, it was said that Futian had backing from the upper worlds, and that legendary Four-Corner Village seemed to have a super powerful mysterious figure among them. With the Hierophant of Mithraism killed, news spread, and the forces had already looked into Futian before they came. The leader of the Shun clan stepped out, and a terrifying spatial storm swept out. Terrifying fissures of the Great Path appeared around the Heavenly Mandate Academy, which looked like an abyss. If he were to attack the Academy right there, and then, the Academy would be destroyed on the spot. After Futian's death back then, they had promised Princess Donghuang never again to meddle with things in the origin realm, which was why they behaved somewhat the whole time. Before Futian's return, they had initially thought of wearing down the powers of the Heavenly Mandate Academy slowly, putting pressure on the Academy from all sides, and causing the Academy to eventually fall apart in the chaotic storms of Origin Realm. They had almost achieved what they set out to do by then. Lord Taishian had been severely injured, and they only had to wait for some years for the alliance of the Academy to fall apart. Yet, Futian returned at such a time, and those people who left with Princess Donghuang had all returned as well. Furthermore, the first thing he did when he returned was to kill the Hierophant of Mithraism, alerting the mini-cultivation forces instantly. Futian and the others had been able to kill a cultivation force with a cultivator at perfect peak level Renhuang realm, which meant that if things would be just as dire, even if they were to target just 1 or 2 of those people. Given that Futian had returned alive, the promise they made with Princess Donghuang was naturally nullified, with both parties capable of going at each other's throats. The pressure remained, and there was only silence. The entire Heavenly Mandate city was in an extremely stifling atmosphere, so much so that countless cultivators in the city dared not even breathe loudly. If you all were to insist on fighting, then please make your move. If you're not out to fight, then what are you all doing at the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Lord Taishian emerged and addressed those would-be invaders. While one could tell that he was weakened just from his voice, yet the tone he used was nonetheless stern. 20 years passed, and things would no longer be like how they had been 20 years ago. If they were to fight again, It would be their last stand. If the other party were to ask for a fight, then they would be getting one. Not only are you all here this time, but many at the Runhuang realm are here as well. I guess that you're not here to ask for a fight? Yi Futian continued. If they were there at the academy to ask for a fight, they would have probably only let the Titans do the work. Bringing the others at Runhuang realm would only be getting in their way, and do the supposed battle no good. The outcome of that battle between both sides was only determined by those at the very top, after all. The others were able to see that those formidable ones had joined hands to lean on the academy. Yet everyone nonetheless knew that things at present were indeed different from how things were 20 years ago. Furthermore, they all sensed that while they were standing off at the moment, extremely powerful wills scanned the place on and off. That was the sign of top-notch cultivators, watching how things were going at the battlefield. And they naturally knew who was watching. In the Heavenly Mandate realm at the moment, there was more than just the alliance surrounding the Heavenly Mandate Academy. There were also the top-notch dark forces. Those people were watching intently as well. If they could join hands, they wouldn't mind allying with those people to destroy the Heavenly Mandate Academy. But they dared not to do so. It was a massive taboo for them to ally with the dark forces out in the open to snuff out a force from the Divine Prefecture. And doing so would probably invoke the Imperial Palace's wrath. They naturally knew about that much. So even if they were to have such intentions, they would have to do so in secret, using each other just like how it had been before. If they were not there to ask for a fight, showing up en masse would naturally mean that they were there as a show of might. They were concerned that the Heavenly Mandate Academy would take them on just like how they did Mithraism, which was why they gathered their allies from all those years ago to pressure the Academy. They needed to send a message to the Academy at least, telling them that if they were to dare do anything, the Allied forces would come down on the Academy at any given moment, and a battle would break out. At present, both sides had a lot more to be concerned about than they had before. I heard that you've made yourself quite famous in the Shangqing domain. You're the only person capable of learning from the corpse of great Emperor Xinjia. I presume? A cultivator at the Runhuang realm asked. That person was not one of the Titans, but was one from the Holy Land of Taichu. His bearing was formidable, and he carried himself with powerful confidence. There was a tinge of his intent to do combat when he looked down at Yi Futian. That cultivator was said to be very renowned and had been quite influential in the Origin realm. The many Titans in the Origin realm were actually all gathered there because of him alone, and that itself spoke of Yi Futian's importance. Is he really as exceptional as he is rumored to be? Just how powerful are his talents? Yi Futian looked up at that man, and he totally didn't expect that a Runhuang realm figure from the Holy Land of Taichu would come out to ask questions. He, naturally, was able to sense the pointedness of the look in the other party's eyes. He then replied, Indeed. The number one genius who shook the Origin realm. I'd like to see how powerful you are today. That fighter didn't waste any more time talking. He stepped out right away onto the battlefield. Towering aura washed all over the place with frightening might. That man was from the Holy Land of Taichu, and was a formidable Runhuang realm being in that holy land. He had made his name for many years, and was perfection at level 6 of the Great Path. It was not every day that he made his move, and his focus was on his own training. He wanted to break the barriers of his level, and made it to level 7. He was not the only one, as there were others from the Holy Land of Taichu at the Runhuang realm present. There were also such people at the side of the Solar Divine Palace, and all of them were eyeing Yi Futian. However, since someone else had already made their move, they stood aside to see just how capable Yi Futian was. Boom! That powerful cultivator from the Holy Land of Taichu stepped out and exerted his pressure. Terrifying waves of the Sky River swept all over the place, bringing about a towering might that was out to suppress all living beings. The cultivators from the Academy were naturally able to sense that terrifying might. Yet, Yi Futian only took a casual look above him. Level 6 at perfect Great Path. That meant that the man was considered quite powerful, and there were not many people at such levels, even at Shangqing domain. That man could indeed be considered a supreme cultivator. Yet, Someone of such level seemed to fail to have Yi Futian take them seriously all the same. He remained standing quietly after taking a look at the other man. He looked up and said, "If you're out to test my might, I'll tell you to give up. You're not qualified enough to do so." That man was among the most powerful at the Renhuang realm in the Holy Land of Taichu. He had supreme powers. Yet to Yi Futian, the man was not qualified enough to test his mettle. That was insolence unlike any other, and such powerful beings from the Holy Land of Taichu had never been belittled like this before. A terrifying storm of great path erupted right away. The academy seemed to have been put under a hurricane. The disciples of the academy all grunted and felt like they were about to be crushed under the pressure of that terrifying might of the great path. However, a formless pressure then supported them and stopped that opposing might above the air. Yi Futian was the only one who stepped out and submitted himself to experience that terrifying might from the other party in earnest. He was all confident and leisurely when he stepped out, walking totally unfazed. The storm came down in an instant, and the terrifying storm of the great path tore through the space. The other man continued to come lower, and every step he made become even more terrifying. Yi Futian remained unflinching and took a cold stare at him. As a palm attack came down from that terrifying storm, Yi Futian charged at the eye of that storm, completely ignoring the power of the storm of great path. "How insolent!" The other man shouted angrily and turned the storm into his own field, stacking of terrifying attacks like it was doomsday, and he out to destroy the world. However, he saw an incredibly dazzling figure zipping through those terrifying attacks of his right away. It was as if that dazzling figure had just ignored all that powers thrown at him. That dazzling figure made it past that frightening storm and appeared right before him. A rumbling was heard, and that sound seemed to have emanated from Yi Futian's own body. He lifted his arm and threw a single punch. That powerful cultivator at Renhuang realm, from the Holy Land of Taichu, was blasted away before everyone's eyes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2199. The Withdrawal. Chapter 2199. The withdrawal. That violent strike shook the hearts of all the top figures who were above the sky. His flesh passed through the spatial storm that tore through the area, hitting the man of the same realm. His body was broken, and his internal organs were wounded as bright red blood stained his clothing. They looked at the figure in the void as divine light flowed upon Yi Futian's torso like a divine body of the great path. His body was the way. Several powerful Renhuang stepped forward. Although they were not on the level of giants, they were full of frightening aura nonetheless. Among them, there was an elder from the Holy Land of Taichu. His hair was half white, and his temperament was out of this world. He was carrying a sword on his back. He was clearly a swordsman. This man had the cultivation of the 8th realm, and gave out a strong sense of threat. He looked down at the area below, and thousands of swords fell at the same time. Even the crowd in the distance felt a strong aura of swordsmanship. 8th realm, and an extraordinary 8th realm at that. All the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy fixed their attention on the man. The aura of this 8th realm cultivator was unusually powerful. It far surpassed the existence of anybody ordinary of the 9th realm. In fact, this cultivator was once an extraordinary man in his own right. When he was a middle Renhuang, his great path had been perfect. When he broke the realm to reach upper Renhuang, some accidents had caused imperfections in his great path and left it incomplete. However, he worked hard at his cultivation and spent 10 years cultivating an extremely powerful sword technique. He was a well-known figure in the Taichu sparring grounds at the Holy Land of Taichu. It was a pity that he couldn't be the master of it. An incomplete great path was a major misfortune. But his combat effectiveness was one of the most powerful in the Holy Land of Taichu, and his swordsmanship was not something that ordinary cultivators in the 9th realm could bear. When he stood above the sky, Yi Futian could feel a trace of pressure. The light of the great path flowed endlessly upon his body. It was as if his body was the source of the great path. Buzz! The two looked at each other in the air. Yi Futian felt the gaze of the other shot at him that suddenly turned into a sword of heaven, piercing into his spiritual world, capable of immolating the soul. Yi Futian's eyes were equally terrifying. At a glance, it seemed like an endless space, so that no matter how far down the sword plunged, it could never reach the end, as if trapped in the door of endless space. Buzz! An overwhelming sword intent enveloped the boundless space. The place where Yi Futian was seemed to have been transformed into a sword domain, a world of swords. The elder's sword flew out of its sheath to intercept, and suddenly the swordsmanship in the firmament was like a fierce giant beast. Chop! The man uttered a word, and in the sword domain that sheltered Yi Futian, sword lightning suddenly appeared, traversing the void and cutting through it with an unimaginable speed that was hard to detect with the naked eye. It was as if a single thought would cut through the space. Boom! A monstrous power of the great path swept out above Yi Futian. The sword of horror slashed down, but did not cut through his body as expected. An amazing divine light exploded out from Yi Futian, like an immortal divine body, imperviously to the swords. Hi's physical form is this strong? Those major figureheads felt that their breath was taken away, just by the sight in front of them. They were all giants from various places, and had seen many enchanting figures in their times, especially top cultivators from the upper worlds. The enchanting genius talents they had seen were in the hundreds of thousands, with many shocking existences among them. But no one had ever seen anyone whose physical form had been cultivated to such a frightening level. In other words, it was no longer a matter of strength regarding his physical body, but rather that his body had already become one with the way. That body was a pure body of the great path. Not only had it become one with the way, but it possessed many various ways, which accounted for its great defense. Buzz! The swordsman was still standing in place, but there was an even stronger sword intent that manifested. Another section of the sword he was carrying on his back jumped out again. Suddenly, the swordsmanship became more terrifying as another sword came in for the kill. Yi Futian continued forward as the great path roared, howling in the void. The sword came in for the kill, but was unable to break through his physical defenses. It was as if his body was truly indestructible. The swordsman from the holy land of Taichu closed his eyes, as he condensed a seal between his hands. In an instant, the sword behind him came out section by section, and with every section that came out, a sword was unleashed for the kill. In a blink of an eye, 9 swords appeared in different positions around Yi Futian's body, and pierced at him at the same time, emitting a sharp and piercing chiming sound. A terrifying sword storm tore through the space, but still could not annihilate Yi Futian's physical body. How strong! Everyone was shocked, and there was a great disturbance in their hearts. Yi Futian's physical form was stronger beyond expectation. Could that be the body of a human cultivator? This was the real body of the way. That sword intent is incredibly strong. But even so, it still didn't manage to cut Yi Futian, everyone thought. Only to see that the sword behind the man finally became completely unsheathed. At the moment when the sword was unsheathed, a chiming was resounded between heaven and earth. That cultivator seemed to emerge out of his body with his sword. He descended in front of Yi Futian. The shadow of this illusion was massive, like a god holding a sharp sword homing in for the kill. Suddenly the 9 swords around Yi Futian seemed to transform into a terrible sword matrix, resonated with the sword that fell for the slaughter. Adjudication! The swordsman spat out the word as he unleashed the sword of judgment. In the past, few people who fought him could stop this sword of his, and he too believed that Yi Futian would be no exception. This sword obliterated the flesh as well as his spiritual soul, but at this moment, Yi Futian opened his eyes and looked like a glaring Vajrabuddha. With a loud roar that rocked heaven and earth, shattering mountains and rivers, it seemed that the Buddha was unleashed by the roar. As the Vajrabuddha who slew the demons, its power shocked the swordsmanship. Yi Futian raised his arm and stretched out his hand. The sword river was flowing as it gathered toward his body. His physical body and the swordsmanship were one and the same. A chiming sound was born from the sword domain. It was a long and persistent howl that resonated with Yi Futian's fingers. An infinite sword intent directly entered into his body of the great path, and became one. The monstrous swordsmanship from the other seemed to be used by him. The coercion of the great path. Those giants trembled inwardly. Yi Futian was able to inflict coercion of the Great Path against a Run Huang in the 8th realm, as if to proclaim that only he was the master of this spatial swordsmanship. The crowd saw Yi Futian's raised arm pointing forward. Suddenly a sword seemed to have materialized, a sword transformed by Yi Futian's body. The 9 swords were crushed as Yi Futian's finger landed on the elusive phantom of the divine sword. Bang! In an instant, this desolation swordsmanship collapsed and disintegrated. The swordsman from Taichu Holy Land shuddered as the spiritual soul entered his body. His face was white as a sheet. Blood poured out of his mouth. His breath was weak, as he was wounded by the Great Path. The crowd rushed towards him, and saw that there were cracks upon his body. These cracks were hard to see with the naked eye, but those who cultivated could sense that there were cracks in his swordsmanship. On the contrary, Yi Futian's whole body was brilliant. Sword aura surrounded him, unmoving and unshakable. Could this be the strength of someone in the 6th realm? All of them had heard that Yi Futian was the only one who could perceive the corporal body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. Could the transformation of his physical body be a reward from successfully comprehending the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor? He's too strong. 8th realms. And it's a powerful figure from the preaching holy land of the upper worlds. Now there are probably not many, other than the giants, who can defeat him, someone thought. Perhaps it would take a top genius from the outside world to be able to defeat Yi Futian? If there were no one from the upper worlds, Yi Futian would probably be ranked invincible, just right under the major figures among all the forces in the original domain. After his return, he was already near invincible under the major figureheads. Where would he be in another 20 years? No wonder all the forces would gather here after receiving the news that Yi Futian had returned. They had to come and see for themselves how much advancements had been made by Yi Futian. At this moment high above the sky, all those major figureheads wanted to kill Yi Futian immediately, but they had some concerns. Killing Yi Futian would provoke an all-out counterstrike from the major figures forming the alliance at Heavenly Mandate Academy. Not to mention, there was a mysterious cultivator in Four Corner Village in the upper worlds. "Do you still want to continue?" asked Yi Futian. When those top figures heard what he said, they were silent. They were in a dilemma now. They dared not kill him outright, but leaving him alive would be too great a threat. The truth was that forces such as the Martial Gods Clan and Sky Reaching School had come to regret their decisions. If they could ask for a truce now, they would, but that possibility had come and gone. The conflict 20 years ago doomed them to their position today. Even if they were to seek reconciliation in private, their allies would never agree to it, and may even turn on them. It was impossible to get out of this predicament, where one of the two sides must be destroyed. 20 years in the Divine Prefecture has done you good. Shen Gao looked at and said to Yi Futian, "I always thought highly of you, but unfortunately, you have been stubborn and unamenable. Now things have gone through great changes in our world, and the original realm is on the brink of major disasters. If you are willing to let go of old grievances, we can perhaps sit down and talk." Of course, now that the original realm is on the verge of great changes, I am willing to let go of old grievances and work with all the forces from Divine Prefecture. This is also the hope of the Imperial Palace, replied Yi Futian, agreeing readily. However, Shen Gao and the others were alarmed. Although Yi Futian agreed willingly, they knew that it was impossible. Yi Futian was toying with them. Even if Yi Futian agreed, could they really trust him? Could they leave Yi Futian alone and let him cultivate until he reached the peak of Renhuang? They all knew that as long as Yi Futian was still alive, they would never have peace of mind. However, they didn't need to come out and say it, as everyone had an implicit understanding. The original realm is changing rapidly, and the Imperial Palace's cultivators had come from Divine Prefecture in the lower worlds. An internal conflict really shouldn't have happened. Let us stop here, said Shen Gao. I agree, Yi Futian replied. The Heavenly Mandate Academy could not go to war either, same as them. Then it's farewell, said Shen Gao. He took his people to leave with him. The rest of the other forces looked at the ground below, disappearing one after another. Soon in the mighty void, the powerful cultivators who came with the coercion disappeared between heaven and earth. It was as if they had never appeared at all. Who could imagine that not long ago, most of the power of the original realm gathered here? It was as if they were here to annihilate Heavenly Mandate Academy for good. Now it ended in such a comical fashion. Futian watched those disappearing figures, but did not relax inside. This was a warning to the other, warning them not to start things they couldn't finish. But he knew very well that, given the chance, they would not hesitate to kill him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2200. The Transformation of the Ziwei Realm. Chapter 2200. The Transformation of the Ziwei Realm. The Shen clan and the Golden Divine Nation had launched their attack, but they did not go about it in the same way they had 20 years earlier. They had just made some threats, and then retreated. This made the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Realm realize that this truly was not like it had been 20 years ago. Most of the forces that had come here were of one mind. They were not here to start a war, but to protect themselves against Futian's actions. The best outcome would be for the two sides to temporarily create a delicate balance and not disturb each other. They would live in this volatile situation. At the same time, they had come once to test out just how powerful Futian was now, but when they saw the frightening strength that he had displayed, they became even warier in their hearts. They wanted to attack, but they were unable to. After the other forces had retreated, the Heavenly Mandate Academy and its allied forces enjoyed a period of calm. They did not take any actions but cultivated in peace, improving themselves gradually. That was how the situation stood. No one was willing to shatter the peace. They understood that the world would fall into chaos, but they had no way of changing this situation. The power of the Divine Prefecture, the Dark World, and the empty Divine Realm had all seeped in there at the same time. It was unavoidable that the world would fall into chaos. However, the power of the Heavenly Mandate Academy and its allies was there. The other powers would not dare to act against them lightly. Thus, all the cultivators were able to enjoy a time of peace. The forces that had come watched all the changes in the original realm. The days passed one after another. Futian cultivated calmly in the Heavenly Mandate Academy, practicing alchemy and giving the pills he created to others to use. They could struggle through taking the pills to improve their physiques, allowing them to go even further along the path of cultivation. Now that he was a Run Huang, he was in harmony with heaven and earth. If he was not killed, he would live forever and not wither away. Thus, he would naturally spend time helping those who were his elders. Even while the Heavenly Mandate Realm was at peace, the other realms were experiencing a time of great turmoil. Something major had happened in the Ziwei Realm. At that moment, Futian and others were all cultivating in the Heavenly Mandate Palace. The teleportation Grand Matrix lit up, and Do Zhao appeared within the matrix along with a group of people. Futian and the others naturally noticed this. They watched as Do Zhao strode through the air towards them, until they reached the place where they were cultivating. Is something the matter? Futian asked Do Zhao. Something has happened in the Ziwei Realm, said Do Zhao in his clear voice. Those guys are all crazy. They have cut open the veins of the earth within the Ziwei Realm. Moreover, it was the faction from the school of the Emperor Star that went down and opened the underground door, causing an earthquake throughout the whole realm. Futian's eyes narrowed slightly. Had they acted against the Ziwei Realm? Moreover, it had happened at the school of the Emperor Star. The school of the Emperor Star was the most powerful force within the Ziwei Realm. Taking the Emperor Star as its name, its inheritance must be extraordinary. What happened? A group of figures walked in, all of them looking at Do Zhao. The forms of the 9 realms all seemed to hide some secrets. Now the forces that had come from outside did not want to let such a thing go. They wanted to open up the secret doors. For the cultivators who had come from other realms, they basically did not care whether people from the original realm lived or died, and they definitely did not care about their cultivation. They wanted to uncover the secrets of the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. They wanted to unearth their treasures and leave. And if their actions caused the realms to collapse, what did that matter to them? Previously, there had been news spreading through the Ziwei Realm that the school of the Emperor Star was protecting the veins of the earth there. Now it seems like that information was not false. The school of the Emperor Star must know something, which is why they agreed to have those outsiders come and open the door. They discovered a frightening underground palace in the core of the Ziwei realm, said Dou Zhao. An underground palace? Everyone's eyes narrowed. The Shadow Realm had had the Shadow Divine Stone underground. Why would there be a palace under the Ziwei realm? Now, those who are going to the Ziwei realm have guessed that this underground palace is probably an imperial palace, continued Dou Zhao. An ancient palace of the great emperor. Of course, this is only a guess. As of yet, no one has uncovered its secrets. All of the realms must have heard this news by now, though, and many cultivators are heading to the Ziwei realm. Yi Futian nodded slightly and said, "Go and let the others know." With the Heavenly Mandate Academy as its center, the teleportation Great Matrix could send people to many other top-level powers. The Dou tribe, the clan of the Seven Slayers, the Nantian Divine Kingdom, the Xiao clan, and the Yuanyang clan were all connected through the teleportation Great Matrix in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Very well. After a while, the teleportation Great Matrix was activated, sending people to the other forces to let them know what was going on. Before long, cultivators from all over were gathering at the Heavenly Mandate Academy. You are wounded, and the Academy needs someone to guard it, so please do not leave, said Yi Futian to Lord Taixian. Lord Taixian nodded. These days, he spent all his time recovering. When Yi Futian and the others came back, he could rest a lot easier, and the pressure on him would lessen quite a bit. The Heavenly Mandate Academy needed someone to guard it. If some sort of problem were to suddenly arise, they would be able to temporarily deal with it if they had someone powerful there. The other cultivators set off, activating the teleportation Great Matrix. The Dou tribe stood high in the heavens, looking vast and mighty within the Ziwei realm. The elder of the Dou tribe was there waiting for them. When he saw them coming, he came out to meet them, saying, "Something big will likely happen here in the Ziwei realm." Everyone nodded. They naturally still remembered what had happened 20 years ago with the Shadow Realm. Ever since then, the Shadow Realm had been set on a ruinous path. Now people had opened up the veins of the earth in the Ziwei realm. After this, it would likely go the same way as it had with the Shadow Realm. And before that happened, this sword would probably sweep up countless cultivators of the Ziwei realm. "Let's go and take a look," said Xiao Dingtian. He wanted to go and see what lay beneath the earth of the Ziwei realm as well. Ever since the Dark World had started to rampage through the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, and destroyed many realms, the top forces of the 9 Supreme Realms had guarded their secrets closely. The Shadow Realm and the Hidden Land Realm had already changed beyond recognition. The forces of Sun God Mountain now controlled the Shadow Realm. The Central Imperial Realm was the most stable, because there were so many top forces there. The empty Imperial Palace was there as well, and no one would dare move against them lightly. Thus, the place that most powers would want to strike first was the Heavenly Mandate Realm. Many of them had taken the opportunity to destroy the Heavenly Mandate Academy, but they had been blocked by the powerful figures there. Now the Ziwei realm had been struck first. Everyone stood up together and flew up into the sky, heading off into the distance. They pierced through the air, moving faster and faster. After a while, they descended from on high down towards the Ziwei realm. They saw that terrible cracks had appeared in the earth here that spread out into the endless distance. None of them knew how wide the gashes were. They filled the entire realm. The closer they came to the school of the Emperor Star, the cracks became even more terrible. The atmosphere of the whole realm had become disturbed. The aura of heaven and earth was mightily unsettled. When they came near to the school of the Emperor Star, they saw an endlessly deep black hole that was vastly wide. It seemed to have broken open swiftly, like a sinkhole. A terrifying aura was seeping out of the sinkhole. Many cultivators stood around it, gazing down into it. Yi Futian and the others moved downward. The horrible aura that was seeping out of the sinkhole had faint divine light flowing in it. As they moved into the sinkhole, they could tell that it was this terrifying power that had caused the cracks all over the Ziwei realm to appear and spread out continuously. What frightening power! Everyone could feel the aura seeping out from within. Even these powerful and famous figures were all afraid of it. It was very similar to what had happened in the Shadow Realm. If things continue like this, the whole Ziwei realm will likely be split open, which lead to the realm being divided into different continents, said the elder of the Dou tribe, a hint of sorrow in his tone. The most unfortunate ones were the common folk. The lower one's level of cultivation, the more terrible it would have been for them. They would likely have been destroyed in this transformation. They had been buried for these people's ambition. The school of the Emperor Star was gone, but its cultivators were still there. They stood off in another direction, staring down. The palace lord held a scepter in his hands, and divine light wrapped around him, mingling with the faint divine light coming out of the sinkhole. You did not hesitate to bury the school of the Emperor Star, and you also sought to open up the forbidden door? The elder of the Dou tribe lowered his head as he spoke, his voice empty. This made the palace lord of the school of the Emperor Star look up at him, purple radiance flashing in his eyes. The school of the Emperor Star will only become stronger from this, answered the palace lord, looking back at the elder. Even if you do open the forbidden door, why do you think the ones who will get the most out of it will be you? Said the elder of the Dou tribe sarcastically. This transformation would attract cultivators from many different realms. If the palace lord of the school of the Emperor Star wanted to unearth the treasures to claim them for himself, it would not be easy. Even the forces allied to him would probably gaze at him, like a tiger gazing at its prey. You do not need to concern yourselves over this, the palace lord responded, looking back down into the empty space. Divine light flashed on his scepter, looking incredibly terrifying. It was as if it was able to produce a resonance with the power coming out of the hole. This made many people wonder, could it be that the divine item underground had a connection to the modern school of the Emperor Star? Up in the sky, cultivators appeared one after another as more forces descended upon the Ziwei realm. When they arrived, they stood in different places, looking down in the hole in the earth. They would not act lightly here. As more cultivators arrived, Futian saw some familiar figures. They were people that he knew from the Divine Prefecture, such as people from the top forces in the Shangqing domain and the Donghua domain. They had shown up here as well. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Cultivators from many different places were all gathered there. The ones who had come from the Donghua domain and the Shangqing domain naturally saw Futian, and the others as well. Cultivators from many different places were all gathered there. The ones who had come from the Donghua domain and the Shangqing domain naturally saw Futian, and the others as well. At that moment, someone with an incredibly sharp gaze was staring at Futian. There was a fierce look of pride in his eyes, and a sense that he looked down on and despised everyone beneath him. It was, of course, Ning Hua, the vice chief of the domain chief of the Donghua domain's manor, and the man who was known as the greatest genius of the Donghua domain. Standing near him were cultivators from all over the Donghua domain. They had not split up when they had come to the original realm. Now that the original realm had undergone great changes, they all had more or less the same goals. Thus, they had gathered together as a group, with the forces of the domain chief's manor as their center. The cultivators of the Donghua domain already knew all about the storm that Futian had caused in the Shangqing domain. Back then, the palace lord Ling Yunzi of Lingxiao Palace and Emperor Yan of the Great Yan ancient royal family had even attacked Four Corner City, and thus they had paid great attention to that area. Afterward, they never would have thought that Futian's name would make all of the Shangqing domain tremble, and that he would become the central figure of Four Corner Village. He had received the protection of the master of Four Corner Village. When the cultivators of the Shangqing realm had attacked him, the master had driven them away. Now Futian's status had risen greatly. It would not be that easy if they wanted to move against him. Futian looked back at Ning Hua, and terrifying killing wool poured from his eyes. He had not forgotten Zhongchan's death at the Battle of the Donghua domain. He would also never forget the dismissal of Wangshan Watchtower. Zhongchan was the favored disciple of the Millet Emperor, the foremost genius of Wangshan Watchtower. He was an upper-level Runhuan, with a perfect divine wheel of the 7th tier. He was one of the 4 great figures of the Donghua domain. He had an incomparably bright future. He had been fated to become one of the heroes of the age. However, he had been slain by Ninghua in the battle, where the domain chief's manor targeted Wangshan Watchtower. Yi Futian would not forget that. This debt would certainly be repaid. If Chen Yi had not brought him out of that battle, and if Emperor Shi had not sent his personal disciple Yang Wuqi to save him by blocking Ninghua, allowing Yi Futian to be brought to Turtle Deity Island, things would have gone very badly for him. He would have died at Ninghua's hands. It could be said that Yi Futian wished to kill Ninghua, even more so than he wished to kill the cultivators of the great Yin ancient royal family and Lingxiao Palace. He was the man that he must slay. The two of them locked gazes, and their eyes were cold and full of murderous intent. But there was still arrogance in Ninghua's eyes, whereas Yi Futian's were full of determination. Even though Ninghua was the vice chief of the domain chief's manor of the Donghua domain, he would still kill him. At that moment, a beautiful woman nodded at Yi Futian and said, "I trust you have been well since last we parted, Emperor Yi?" Yi Futian looked over at her. Qin Qing was one of the 3 great disciples of the sword goddess of the divine palace of fluttering snow in the Donghua domain. Beside her were 2 other goddesses, Jiang Yueli and Chu Hanxi, and the sword goddess herself was standing before the 3 of them. She had come in person to the empty realm. Due to the complicated relationship between Yi Futian and the domain chief's manor, the cultivators of the Donghua domain naturally had to maintain a certain distance from Yi Futian. Qin Qing did not have to be like this. One reason was that several of the goddesses of the divine palace of fluttering snow regarded Yi Futian's favorably and thought that he had perhaps even more potential than Ninghua. The second reason was due to the divine palace of fluttering snow's own strength. The sword goddess was the foremost sword wielder in the Donghua domain. Even the domain chief had to respect her. Thus, they did not have to worry too much about this relationship. "I hope you have been well as well," replied Yi Futian politely. Then he looked at Sword Goddess and said, "Greetings, senior." Sword Goddess nodded slightly. She knew all about what had happened to him in the Shangqing domain. He was indeed worthy of being called a hero. He had become more and more outstanding ever since he had left the Donghua domain. Now the master of Four Corner Village was taking care of him. If domain chief Ning Yuan wanted to move against him, he would have to think long and hard about it. The other people that he knew also looked at Yi Futian, like the Taihua Skylord of Taihua Mountain and the goddess Taihua. Yi Futian was skilled at the divine melody, and he had left a deep impression on them. Huang of the Desolate God Palace naturally saw Yi Futian as well. This talented man had displayed his enormously powerful divine wheel at Donghua Academy and had become incredibly famous in the Shangqing domain after he left. Who knew how powerful he was now? Yi Futian's 2 great enemies had come as well. Emperor Yan of the great Yin ancient royal family and Palace Lord Ling Yunzi of Lingxiao Palace. They stared at Yi Futian, their murderous intent clear on their faces. The domain chief of the domain chief's manor Ning Yuan had not come. Emperor Yan and Ling Yunzi had come because Ning Yuan had promised to guard their lair for them. Lingxiao Palace was in the Donghua heavens, so Ning Yuan was able to guard it directly. The great Yin ancient royal family was nearby as well, and so the domain chief's manor had secretly sent a top figure there as well. Moreover, the domain chief's manor had set up a teleportation matrix connecting the 2 forces so that they could support each other instantly. Their goal was obviously to protect against the Millet Emperor in Li Changsheng. They hoped that when the 2 of them appeared, they could take them down to avoid future troubles. Otherwise, these 2 great powers would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. They would not dare to make any rash actions. Whenever they left, they had to worry about the safety of their home. Domain Chief Ning Yuan did not dare to leave either. The Millet Emperor and Wangshan Watchtower had a deep alliance. The Millet Emperor, who bore the divine stela, could wield its power, giving him the ability to let loose terrifying combat ability. He was even able to fight Ning Yuan, which had been put to the test last time. Thus, Ning Yuan had to stay at the domain chief manor. Yi Futian swept his gaze over the people from these forces. When the original realm was in chaos, people gathered from all directions. The Millet Emperor, Li Changsheng, Zhongchan, and the other cultivators of Wangxing Watchtower should all be here too, but there was no trace of them. Zhongchan had been slain, and the Millet Emperor and Li Changxing were hidden away in secret. This was all the fault of the domain chief's manor. He naturally understood that the great Yin ancient royal family and Lingxiao Palace had been sent here by the domain chief's manor. The domain chief's manor was backing them. In another direction, Yi Futian could see many of the forces from the Shangqing domain. Cultivators from the Nanhai family, the Lu family, the Demon Cloud clan, and more were all there. They were gazing at Yi Futian as well. Nowadays, no one in the Shangqing domain did not know Yi Futian. In the battle where they had threatened Four Corner Village, the master had fought like a stampeding god. Yi Futian's name was now incredibly glorious as well, and had spread all throughout the world. Seeing the many powerful people around Yi Futian, they could already tell that he had come from the original realm, and that he was a cultivator from there. But they never would have thought that he was so powerful within the original realm. And there were many powerful people following him as well. Sure enough, the light of such a person could not be concealed here. Presumably, before he had left the original realm, his name had already shaken this unfallen world. The forces of the original realm naturally did not need to say very much. They were obviously very familiar with Yi Futian. It seemed that Yi Futian left a deep impression everywhere he went. Of course, in addition to this, many of the top figures who had come from the mainland were not familiar with Yi Futian. Many of the cultivators here had frightening auras, and their power filled the sky. Standing there was like standing amidst the ancient gods. Yi Futian had never before seen such a terrifying formation. Even back when the Divine Prefecture and the two great powers had fought a small-scale war, there had not been a formation like this. After all, the power that the three forces had mobilized at that time had been limited. But this time was different. The Imperial Palace had let all the forces of the Divine Prefecture come here, and most of the forces from the Dark Realm and the Empty Divine Realm had sent their top figures to the original realm. Thus, it could be said that once the original realm began to change, the group of people that appeared was unprecedentedly strong. Not only were the heroes of the original realm there, but also all the top powerhouses of the vast world. In addition to those of the cultivators that had come, there was also a terrible aura coming from the darkness. No one went out into it, but everyone could sense the invisible power seeping out of it. Who knew how many cultivators coveted the power of the original realm? Because of this, Dou Zhao had scolded the palace lord of the school of the Emperor Star. Although the forces that had come from the Divine Prefecture were greedy, many of them still had some scruples, and would not dare be too outrageous. The Imperial Palace was ever present, and they would not dare to directly destroy the 9 realms. However, as a native power of the Ziwei realm, the school of the Emperor Star had actually destroyed the base of power for their own faction. They had opened up the veins of the earth. In that way, the other forces did not need to stand on ceremony, and had come here one by one. Perhaps this was because the palace lord of the school of the Emperor Star held a scepter that could produce a resonance with the power within. Maybe that was why he thought he could do it. Beside Yi Futian, Old Ma looked into the deep hole. The power coming out of there is terrifying. It will not be easy to go in. Terrible light was shining out, and the power that seeped out of the hole could truly be called horrifying. Even top-level figures would not lightly set foot inside. This power will probably gradually weaken. You can see that right now it is spreading out through the entire Ziwei realm. The peak of the power has been unleashed. It will probably lead to the destruction of the Ziwei realm, Emperor Nan whispered, seemingly concerned. If this was truly the case, the cultivators of the Ziwei realm were truly unfortunate. They would likely be thrust into an abyss of misery. The actions of the school of the Emperor Star had truly been without pity or mercy. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2202 A Stone? Chapter 2202 A Stone? The crowd did not dare to make any sudden movements as they gazed down from the sky above. The endless rumbling sounds were as though an earthquake was occurring. The entire Ziwei realm was quaking. Return immediately and protect the tribesmen. The chief of the Dou tribe ordered the cultivators behind him. Understood. Acknowledged the cultivators as they left and returned to the Dou tribe. The clan leader of Clan of the Seven Slayers also naturally realized this. He immediately gave the same order. They all sensed that something big was about to happen to the Ziwei realm. The catastrophe this time would be even direr than what happened to the Shadow realm last time. In the endless space in the sky above, beams of divine light shone down onto the ground. The divine light resonated with things underground, causing the light to glow even brighter and radiate out into the vast space. The cracks in the ground kept propagating outwards, followed by intense rumbling. The crowd vaguely sensed that the underground palace was about to break out through the ground. It seemed that it would destroy the entire Ziwei realm as it emerged from below. A celestial force, said Yi Futian as he looked up at the divine halos that were raining down. It is indeed a celestial force of heaven and earth, commented the chief of the Dou tribe beside Yi Futian as he nodded his head. Also, this is no ordinary power. It carries an air of nobility, as though it possesses a supreme aura. That means that these powers correspond to the different powers of the Ziwei realm. It seems that everything is secretly connected, said Emperor Nan in a low voice. At that moment, the hearts of the cultivators of the Ziwei realm were trembling frenziedly. They were in a state of panic when they discovered that their entire world was changing. The ground collapsed and shattered as cracks propagated outwards. There were even large chunks of land that were completely split off from the Ziwei realm and floated in the sky. What was happening? Many people did not even know what was going on. Panic was spreading frantically. The Ziwei realm was one of the 9 supreme imperial realms. There were countless living beings and cultivators living in it. This panic seemed to coalesce into a mass of frightening emotion. Even across the vast distances, the top figures in the direction of the school of the Emperor Star could faintly sense it. The figures of Emperor Nan, the chief of the Dou tribe, and other cultivators leaped into the sky. Their terrifying wills swept out and enveloped the vast space as they said, "The Ziwei realm is about to collapse. All cultivators take to the skies." "How are we going to deal with this?" asked the chief of the Dou tribe. "The Ziwei realm is full of cultivators. They should know what to do when they see the changes to the surface of the realm." Tianhuan Palace Lord asked, "Where have you all come from?" "We are all from the outside world." "Sir, do you know that this independent world has undergone some changes?" Xiao Dingtian asked. Replied Tianhuan Palace Lord as he nodded his head. "We are already aware of it. The seal has been opened, has it not?" The various cultivators narrowed their eyes. It seemed that Tianhuan Palace Lord already knew about this. That meant that these top figures knew the truth about their cultivation world. Responded Xiao Dingtian as he also nodded his head. "We are cultivators from the outside world. After the seal was unraveled, we came to this world. Hence, we intentionally came over to seek guidance as to what sort of world this place is." Before this, when asking passers-by, some of them took Yi Futian for a fool. However, the strongest people in the realm immediately understood their intention. From the looks of it, the other party might know much more than they imagined. Tianhuan Palace Lord nodded and said, "Everyone please come in." "Many thanks," replied Xiao Dingtian as he saluted with his fists. He then followed the other party and sat down at the seats arranged in front of the main hall. Both parties sat across from one another. Tianhuan Palace Lord then said, "Since you all have broken the seal and come from the outside world, you should know about some things. We suppose this is an ancient world. Back during the collapse of the heavenly path, Ziwei the Great sealed off this independent world. After countless eons today, the seal has finally been opened," said Xiao Dingtian. The other party nodded their heads slightly and explained, "In our world of Ziwei, similar ancient legends have been passed down. Back then, Ziwei the Great protected our people by sealing our world away in this Ziwei segmentum. You all from the outside world must have certainly seen it. Our world is also known as the Ziwei segmentum. These are all lands ruled by Ziwei the Great back in the day. This Ziwei segmentum forms its own world. There should be little difference between our world and the outside world. However, these secrets are only known by the top figures. Unless one reaches the Renhuang plane, it would be difficult to leave one's own star, let alone this segment. Yi Futian and the others nodded their heads slightly. It was as they had expected. This place was the world of Ziwei the Great. Did the great emperor leave behind his will? Yi Futian asked. He should have. The other party replied as he glanced at Yi Futian and nodded his head. Although no one has seen the actual body of Ziwei the Great, in the world of Ziwei, he is the supreme deity. All the laws here obey the will of Ziwei the Great. The entire segment is encompassed within his will. I believe that this is the display of the will of Ziwei the Great. He has always been protecting this world. Yi Futian and the others understood what the other party said. Ziwei the Great was the god worshipped by everyone in this world. He was the supreme deity and existence, the religion of the people of this world. This was to be expected as this was the world he protected. How is the outside world like? Asked Tianhuan Palace Lord. It was not just him who was curious. The other cultivators of the world of Ziwei also looked at Yi Futian and the others with curious looks. Xiao Dingtian slowly explained. Many years ago, when the heavenly path collapsed, it was rumored that the world faced a huge catastrophe. The heavenly path was shattered, and the various deities perished. Later on, the original realm and the outside world were formed. We are from the original realm. It is also known as the Void Realm. The world of Ziwei was sealed within the divine stone at the core of the Ziwei realm in the original realm. He gave a brief introduction to the other party regarding the current situation in the outside world. The outside world must be much larger than the world of Ziwei then? Someone asked. All of you will be able to leave this place in the future. When the time comes, you may see for yourself, Xiao Dingtian said. By the way, where is the core of the world of Ziwei located? We wish to see the core region of this world. On Ziwei Imperial Star, the other party replied. If you stand in the sky and look towards the segment, Ziwei Imperial Star is the highest and brightest star that you will see. Ziwei Imperial Palace is located there. Legend has it that, back then, it was the cultivation training ground of the great emperor. That place is the absolute core of this world. It rules over the world of Ziwei. Our Tianhuan Palace is on Tianhuan Star. However, Tianhuan Palace takes orders from Ziwei Imperial Palace. It is the holy land of this world. If you wish to explore the secrets of this world, you can head over there. The crowd nodded their heads. It was not just them. Other cultivators had also come to this world. It was just that they were now scattered across different regions. Everyone would certainly gather at Ziwei Imperial Star. This world actually also had a Ziwei Palace. However, the word Imperial was added to it. Ziwei Imperial Palace was once the cultivation training ground of Ziwei the Great. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Imperial Star, the largest starry world in Ziwei segment, had countless cultivators. Imperial Star, the largest starry world in Ziwei segment, had countless cultivators. The cultivators of this starry world were believers of Ziwei Imperial Palace. Ziwei Imperial Palace, located in the Imperial City, was the absolute holy land of this starry world. No one had ever questioned its authority. All the cultivators in Ziwei segmentum believed in Ziwei the Great. The cultivators of Ziwei Imperial Palace were spokespersons of Ziwei the Great. Everything they did was the embodiment of the will of the great emperor. In this world, those with the best talents and the strongest cultivation would eventually enter the Ziwei Imperial Palace, which was the most supreme of all cultivation places. Because of this, the strength of Ziwei Imperial Palace was beyond imagination, easily in control of the entire Ziwei world, impossible to be dethroned by anyone or any forces. After so many years, Ziwei Imperial Star had always stood at the peak of Ziwei segment, worshipped by people in this world. Futian and the others came to the imperial city of Imperial Star from Celestial Star. When they stepped into this city, they could feel a solemn and magnificent aura. All the cultivators here were incredibly strong, much stronger than those in the main cities of Divine Prefecture that Futian had been to. In Ziwei Segmentum, the status of the imperial city was probably equivalent to the center of the Divine Prefecture in the Outer Realm, the same as the imperial city where Donghuang the Great resided, a supreme land. Ziwei Imperial Palace itself was like a magnificent city. When Futian and the others came to the outside of the Imperial Palace, they saw a city within a city that stretched for thousands of miles, extending all the way to higher ground. Inside, it was full of holy and magnanimous aura, far more spectacular than the Tianhuan Palace they had visited before. Outside Ziwei Imperial Palace, anyone who passed by would worship it, gazing inside with eyes full of awe. This demonstrated the position that Ziwei Imperial Palace occupied in the hearts of cultivators in Ziwei Segmentum. People from the outside came to this segment at the same time. We are probably not the first to arrive. Maybe someone else was here already, said Duan Tianxiong. Everyone nodding in agreement. Nan Huang said, "This place is unfathomable. I'm afraid that none of us will defeat the strongest cultivator that Ziwei Imperial Palace has to offer." The crowd was disquieted for a moment but understood right away. Tianhuan Palace had cultivators on their level. The Palace Lord of Tianhuan Palace had personally explained that they were all under the command of Ziwei Imperial Palace. This showed just how powerful and great Ziwei Imperial Palace was. This was the place where Ziwei the Great used to cultivate, and it might contain ancient secrets beyond their imagination.